Hello and welcome to the Growth Hacking Culture podcast. I'm your host, Ivan Palomino, and today we are tackling a challenge that nearly all of us face, the struggle to thrive in our careers without burning out. And not funny enough, 77% of professionals have experienced burnout at their current job. The data is clear, the modern workplace is a minefield of stress, exhaustion, and a feeling of being stuck in a working hell. But what if the solution isn't to wait for your company to change? What if you have the power to transform your own work life from the ground up? That's the empowering message of our guest today, Lindsay Barnett. She is the author of the new book, Working Hell to Working Well. Lindsay is a workplace experience expert who is here to share her evidence based methods for taking control of your happiness. I wanted to say career, but it doesn't sound right, Lindsay. When we are talking about career, we're talking about people. It's life in general. In this episode, we are going to dive into some of the most powerful concepts from her book, including how to use mindfulness as a tool to navigate high stress situations, what it is and what it isn't, the delicate art of being genuine at work and setting healthy boundaries, how to proactively craft your job into something you love, even if a new title isn't the only option. And finally, we are going to talk about the science behind her methods, this psychological and neurological research that proves that you don't have to be a victim of your work environment. So, if you're ready to move from feeling stuck to feeling empowered, you have come to the right place. Let's get started, Lindsay. Thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. After listening to your podcast and all of your esteemed guests, I'm very honored to be here.
It is a pleasure. I have to tell you something.
Yeah.
This podcast, it was done just because I'm curious. And for me, rather than having an MBA, for me, this is learning. So I'm going to be asking you the
Yeah.
questions that I have. And maybe it would be interesting for the audience, but sometimes it matches.
Great. Great.
Lindsay,
Yeah.
one of the biggest questions when you are at work and you feel a little bit powerless, when things around happen, toxic culture, bad bosses, and you're suffering, you're in pain. There is a way to determine, there should be a way to determine how far an employee should go in being the genuine self without compromising their professional image or creating conflict. There should be a way because you cannot show all of yourself. I know that a lot of books are saying, yes, you have to be
Yeah.
genuine, but there should be a match. You cannot be a genuine person with everybody. So
Yeah.
how do you
Yeah.
draw that line, Lindsay?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I actually was thinking about this because they're the lines are going to differ depending on the person, the audience. So in some ways, I think for me, the origin of really, bringing yourself, your whole self to work, a lot of it I think is really about connection. And so if you are sharing a part of yourself in the spirit of connecting with someone, that's a difference than just like, here's who I am, take it or leave it. Um, so, context matters, the container matters, right? So, I do a lot of team coaching and offsite facilitation. And one of the first things that I do is really set the tone for what are our community agreements? You know, balance participation, be curious, no judgment, things like that. And when you create that container and that safe space for sharing, then people are invited to share different parts of themselves. So the container matters, the context matters. Is it one-on-one? Is it in a group setting? What are the emotions, right? So there are a lot of different things to take into account, but I think for me the biggest one is really about, am I using this for connection? Am I sharing so that hopefully someone either understands me a little bit better, or I'm inviting them in to share a little bit more of themselves so that we might find some common ground. Or so I think the intention behind it matters.
Hmm. I like this word intention because it goes with our very human curiosity. It's almost
Mhm.
like, do I want, I mean, I give it a chance to connect with someone, like an experimentation. Maybe that person is going to be like total ass, and so it doesn't, you can remove it. But you have to give it a chance to prove the
Yeah.
point. If it is a bad person, a good person, if it is a good person, what is, that's one of the reasons why we are human, is to, as you say, connect with others. And
Yeah.
that is quite positive. It's about a mindset, the perspective that you take when discovering others.
Yeah. And there's actually a great quote that I love from Abraham Lincoln that said, "I do not like that person. I must get to know them better."
Mhm.
And it's
Exactly.
very much about that of like, how do I stay in that space of curiosity as you shared?
This is a good quote. Um, we need to know that person, but once we have the proof, you have the choice. And I think life is
Yeah.
about making choices that is not a purely emotional uh, decision, that where you don't have the control. I'm angry with you, I don't like his face or whatsoever. No, it's a rational decision because you have you are in control of the part of your brain that is taking a rational decision. And
Yeah.
that drives me to my next question. A lot of
Yeah.
people, including you on your book, talk about mindfulness.
Yeah.
And there is, this instant reaction when we talk about mindfulness, we think about yoga, meditation, and so on. But
Yeah.
I feel that there is much more about mindfulness than just yoga mats and
Yeah.
spending time
Yeah.
meditating. And that relates to the topic of what I mentioned before, is about the control of our emotions. And I think that mindfulness could be a powerful tool to take with our hands our destiny at work, and to manage better sometimes the feeling of pain.
Yeah.
What is your take in your book? What is your take about mindfulness, and about how to use it at work?
Yeah.
Feeling lost in the noise of social media? Inspo cuts through the clutter, connecting you directly with real insights from real experts and industry leaders. It's a new social network dedicated to knowledge sharing, industry insights, and thought leadership. Get the latest from top minds in your field, or build your own thought leadership portfolio on Inspo. Already trusted by thousands of professionals worldwide, be part of the conversation and download Inspo Experts today on the App Store or visit www.inspo.expert.
So I think a couple things, and you're really like dancing around this, is to me, mindfulness is about creating more choice, right? It's about creating enough space from a trigger moment. Doesn't necessarily mean like triggered, but like, something happened
Hmm?
and I have a choice of how I'm going to respond versus how I'm going to react, right? React is a little bit more impulsive, whereas responsiveness embeds that element of choice and that element of intention, as we mentioned earlier. And so, one of the things that I talk about in my book is I really break out mindfulness into head, heart, body, right? IQ, EQ, BQ. It's how do we tap into the different intelligence centers so that we can be more choiceful, right? And that we can really decide how we want to respond in any given situation, whether that's responding to take care of ourselves or responding, in interactions with others. One of the examples that I use, because I think a lot of people, unfortunately, are just kind of brains walking around on bodies. Like they don't often have a lot of connection to their body. And that's a beautiful way to just be in touch with, okay, what do I need to do here, right? Like, oh, a meeting just got canceled. all right, I'm just gonna like power through, which is how a lot of people think about things. But then they start working. If you're mindful, you notice that your body is kind of twitching and feeling a little antsy. When you're working mindfully, you recognize, you know what? I'm going to go get a drink. I'm going to go take a walk around the block. Then I'm going to center myself and I'm going to go back to work and then find that you can be more productive. But if we're just in that space of I just need to stay in front of my computer all day, all night, and magically work is going to get produced, we're missing some of the intelligence that our mind, body, heart are sharing with us.
I think you summarize it quite well. That mindfulness is far away from the image that we have about this yoga thing. Uh, Yoga can be a means, but there is 10 million means that you can choose in order to be in connection with your body. And this connection with your body, even though it sounds a little bit quirky when I say it, but it is that our body feels before our emotions are
Yeah.
processed. And if we are aware that something is going on, in French, for instance, there is a sentence that I love. They say
Yeah.
that the mustard is going through my nose when you're angry, which has no meaning in
Love that.
Spanish, my original
Yeah.
language.
Yeah.
Mustard is going through my nose. But in fact, when I'm angry, I can feel something in my nose. And that's before I'm aware of the feeling that
Mhm.
I'm really angry. But if we pay
Yeah.
attention to these little details, as you mentioned, there is a trigger that's probably most of the time it could be external, bad discussion with a boss, a friend or a colleague who has been an idiot with you whatsoever. There is a reaction that you feel it first, but if you have this little time, these milliseconds to detect what is happening, you can make a choice about how you are going to be reacting. It doesn't mean I'm killing my emotions. I'm
Yeah.
just a little bit more sensitive to, do I want to express
Yeah.
something that I
Yeah.
where it's out of control? And it's pure human biology. It's nothing to do with something that is up in the air. It's not about chakras. And by the way, I don't believe in chakras. I say it openly. But it's about a moment of choice. And I think that in the workplace as well as in life with our relationships, if we had more times of choices, times
Yeah.
when we detect and we practice, because it doesn't come just naturally. It's not the intention doesn't follow the action. You need to practice
Yeah.
it in order to be able to
Yes.
to do it. Lindsay, how do you practice it at work?
Yeah.
How do you make time? Because we're talking about not mindfulness in general, but making it, creating habits of mindfulness in the
Yeah.
workplace. How do you make time for that?
Yeah. So it requires a lot of intention, and it also requires the recognition that the more you practice it, the better you get, right? Just like a sport, or, if I played basketball once a week versus I played basketball 7 days a week, right? I'm going to be better at basketball most likely. Um, Not that I play basketball, but the point of it is, right, there's an element of practice that we need to embed. And so a lot of what I do when I'm working with my coaching clients, even my team coaching clients, is trying to figure out what are some of the practices, what are some of the habits that maybe we can inculcate with a little bit more mindfulness. And so just to give an example from one of my clients, um, she was in a global role, worked around the clock, had two young kids. So, we were trying to figure out how can we help her create some more space in her time and day. And one of the things that I learned that she did do for herself was she got tea in between meetings. So I was like, great, let's habit bundle. So what I want you to do is put on a sticky note, breathe, and put it on your tea canister. And so while you're sitting there waiting for your tea, kettle to boil, or while you're making your tea, just add in that I'm just going to be aware of my breathing, right? And that may be a little like crystals and all that, but but it's these little things that can really make a difference, especially if you're starting from where you already are. Like I had a lot of clients who were gardeners, rode bicycles, were coffee drinkers, and we just would find these little micro moments to create some element of mindfulness. And sometimes they would come back to me and be like, that didn't work. And I'm like, okay, let's try something else. But the point is that we're in this place of experimentation and practice and trying to figure out what will stick.
Hmm. That's quite unique about creating a space for yourself. It is that you cannot come with a book with this is the only thing that is going to be working for you. As you say, you have to find the right moment that matches the lifestyle of the person. This person, this example that you gave, the tea, great. This is great. This is a good moment where there is a little bit of peace and where you can go inside yourself and just make sure that the part of your brain that is making you think rationally is awake.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
just giving the little slap to your brain. Otherwise, you are into autopilot. Without all
Yeah.
decisions will be emotional, which are our default mode as human beings.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love the fact that you can create, there is no way that people cannot create moments because it takes short moments. It's micro habits, as you say, the small little moments that you can create in between your busy
Yeah.
life, just to give the little slaps to your brain. Oh, I shouldn't be using that that metaphor, slaps to your brains.
All good. All good.
Now, there is often I hear the same. So if something is not going well, you can go and talk to human resources.
Yeah.
Well, I have my thoughts about it. Back
Yeah.
in the days of in my corporate life, it wasn't the best choice in my life that I had to say,
Mm.
this is not going well, the culture is bad, or this guy just told me something so horrible that you wouldn't believe. And he's my boss, by the way.
Yeah.
So, at the personal level, it is sometimes a little bit scary, difficult to trust someone who hasn't even got the time to create this connection with you.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
how can the employees work with human resources in order to be able to advocate their specific needs? Because sometimes it can be dangerous. You don't know if you can trust them or not, and depends on the
Yeah.
person. And human beings, unfortunately, we are made of half of the population being an ass and half of the population, well, maybe a third of the population who doesn't care, and maybe a little bit of good
Yeah.
human beings.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so I feel like H human resources is set up very differently at every company I've worked at.
Yeah.
Um, so it depends. I can share at least in my experience in human resources how I tried to support people. Um, but I think there's a key thing to this that is worth just unpacking around just accountability and who owns decisions and whatnot. So I think in my experience, oftentimes people think human resources has more power than human resources may have
Mm,
over someone's experience. And so, really recognizing what is the role of human resources at this organization, because they're not all powerful. um, I think that's where, at least in the roles that I played, oftentimes, I saw myself as a coach, right? You're
mm,
coming to me with a situation. Realistically, it's not mine to solve for you, but I can certainly have a conversation with you, well, tell me about it. How do you feel about it? What solutions would look good for you? Um, and that sometimes isn't very satisfying for people, right? Because they're like, I want to be promoted, make it happen. It's like,
Mm,
that's not my call, but I can talk to you about how promotions work, how you might want to have that conversation with your boss, how you might want to interact with your colleagues, so it's I think a lot of it has to do with a mismatch in expectations. But I do hear what you're saying around trust. Um, that is something that for me was really important, that I was a trustworthy thought partner
mm,
for people, and that, when I did have the opportunity to advocate more broadly, right? If we're putting in programs, I could use the voice of the customer or the
mm,
client to create better programs or offerings, or share this is what's going on in our culture that we need to nip in the bud, as I was speaking with managers or senior leaders around, here are the expectations of you that we'd like for you to meet. How can I help you and coach you in being able to better create an environment for your team members?
mm.
But, a lot of it is expectations.
If you had like a magic wand and you were that person, this human resource person, what is the kind of power that you would love to have in the organization? And what is the type of impact that you would like to have in order to change, improve the culture, or move it from, as in your book, from hell to well? How,
Yeah.
what would you do?
There are so many things that I would do. Gosh, I don't even know where to start, but I mean, at the end of the day, leadership sets the tone. So, I would start with the C-suite, the senior leaders, the founders, whoever it is, and, really get them on board with the idea that in order to do well, people have to be well. And if you can focus on that, then hopefully the profits will follow. Like there's so much data and research that shows that, if people are in a good place, the profits, the customer satisfaction, et cetera, all of these different metrics improve. So it still kind of boggles my mind that we have decades of research
Mm,
on management best practices, on well-being, all of these things, and yet we still are operating under the belief, well, this is what the business needs, or this is, we've just got to make a profit, or and yet I think I'm advocating for the yes and, right? How can we do well by being well?
mm. What what I have the feeling is that even though during the COVID times, human resources made a huge improvement in terms of advocacy for employees. And
Mhm.
to tell you the truth, I was criticizing human resources before COVID big time because
Yeah,
you,
most
can
people
trust
do.
them. They were not advocating for employees, they were more advocating to save their jobs, or being in the side of the company, not on the side of the people in the company. And that was bad. And suddenly during COVID, their voices were heard much more than any other time. So I guess that we are in a moment of transition where human resources has to decide if they want to sit on the table with the big boys in order to
Mhm.
change this change that you were mentioning,
Yeah.
that sounds beautiful, or not. Maybe that they are just, they're going to stay without the power. But now is the time to grasp the power in order to change
Yeah.
the vision and all, and share and explain more of this research to people in business. Because
Yeah.
believe me, no matters, and I have discussed with very educated people from good universities, the beliefs that they have regarding how much we can employees can give in terms of productivity, or how much you cannot trust them if you leave them alone. And it's crazy. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's one side of the that's for the business people. And human resources, even though probably 40 to 50% of human resources people have a degree in psychology, it's almost like they have forgotten about how the human being reacts in the moments of volatility, in moments where there is fears, changes, and all the stuff. And
Mhm.
and it seems that they forgot about human psychology.
Yeah. There's also a component of how how much is happening behind the scenes too, that a
Mm,
lot of people don't know is happening, right? Where there may be a lot of advocating. Like I think of, at least in the US, all these big return to office mandates.
mm,
Um, I've had many conversations with human resources people who said, I tried, right?
mm,
And but it's not my call. So there are group decisions, there are leader decisions, human resources. If you understand the business,
mm,
and how various things impact the actual business, you might actually be able to have more influence at the table.
mm,
But I'll say this too. A lot of managers don't create credibility for themselves when they blame things on human resources.
mm.
Like I've had a lot of situations where people are in my office. My manager said you wouldn't let them promote me. I was like, I, and it's and so much of what I did when I would be working with managers and leaders was trying to foster their credibility around when you own the decision. Yes, I understand it's the fear of not being liked or whatnot, but there's a respect, there's an understanding, right? Versus when you say, well, HR made me do it. It's like, okay, so you're basically saying you don't have any power. So anyway, I just bring some of these up to bring kind of the other side here for my HR brethren that are listening, that are, fighting the good fight and trying to advocate for people and support, leaders and businesses, to do good work
Lindsay, I
and
have
help
heard
people
these
do
type of
good work.
stories about human resources made me do it. I have heard it several times. The lack
I
of
know.
courage, and it happens to everybody once, in at least in their lifetime as an employee, to cover their asses with pointing the finger to somebody else, either my boss, the human resources person, a peer, or whatsoever. It's very human. This state of fear of
Yeah,
owning your decisions.
yeah,
What is going to happen with when somebody's going to hear bad news from your mouth?
yeah, yeah.
Now, in your book, there is this idea of crafting your job.
Yes.
And I felt it like it was a core theme, and I really liked it.
Oh, good.
What's the first step for someone who feels stuck in their current role but want to
Yeah,
craft a new one? What advice would you give in order to navigate to have this conversation with a manager? How do you
yeah,
craft a new job?
yeah. Well, I think the first place to start really is, what are your needs?
Mm,
So what do I need to get out of work, and how do I match that to the work that I have or the work that I want, etc. So just to give you an example for me, I had an opportunity to live in Australia for a couple years with my husband's job. And so I was left, a career for, I don't know, however, a couple decade career. And this was my first time as a not working mom. And I really had to think about what was the need that work fulfilled? Because I am a really big believer in work being a wonderful outlet for satisfaction, for meaning, for growth, all of those things, for connection. And what I realized is I had three key needs that I needed to figure out how to meet. And one of them was, I call them my three I's. One of them was interaction, and in my case, adult interaction, because I was wandering around with a 18-month-old toddler. So I needed adults. So interaction. The other one was intellectual challenge, and I needed to feel like I was having an impact. And so even though I had left my job, I didn't know what I was going to do. I couldn't really work in Australia. I found a way to get some of those needs met. And so I pursued writing children's books. I don't know. I was reading a lot of them. I was sick of reading about monkey trucks. So I figured I could come up with something else. Uh, but it met my need for intellectual challenge, right? I was coming up with a new career pivot, something I could try, learn about. I don't know anything about writing children's books, so I took some classes and I needed interaction. So I started a writing group, right? So I got other writers that also were intrigued by it. I attended conferences. Um, impact. I never ultimately got published. Apparently, I wasn't very good. But the impact was more on me, but I was okay as long as I had kind of two out of three being met. And so sometimes what I do with my clients is we go through this, what do you need from work? And once you know what the needs are, you can start getting more creative with possibilities of meeting those needs. And that to me is really where the job crafting begins. And so, for example, those three I's have tended to follow me for the most part wherever I go as kind of core needs for work. And fast forward to a few years ago when I started working part-time, I recognized that I was not getting the same intellectual challenge because, as you might imagine, part time, you may not get the meatiest projects. So, whereas I was used to having really meaty, challenging work. And so I realized, okay, so maybe I'm not going to get the level of intellectual challenge at work, but how do I get it outside of work? So let me look at, ways that I can foster my skills and develop myself through an outside certification or a class or doing other things. But again, it all focused in that needs and then opening up the aperture to see, well, what else is possible?
Hmm. And that is quite powerful. And sometimes we don't believe how important it is to create this moment of self-awareness. And
Hmm.
maybe that's the moment where sometimes we need a person like a coach in order to bounce ideas and open our a little bit about our map, because sometimes we believe that we have that solution. The only way that I can be successful is staying in this work because this company is awesome, has a good reputation, has awesome products, but we are unhappy. We are in pain
Mm.
because
Yeah.
we don't exploit everything. This little dream that we had when we were 13, 14, what we wanted to have as an impact in the world and so on is forgotten. We are doing papers, we are filling up Excel files, we are doing presentation after presentation, sometimes lying
Yeah.
during the presentation because you have to show
Yeah.
the good face to everybody. Um,
Right.
and we feel disappointed about ourselves, and that's the starting of going downwards towards burnout, feeling
Mm.
unhappy,
Yeah. Yeah.
but everything starts with the moment of self-awareness. You cannot craft your own job if you don't have a clue
Mm.
what makes you feel empowered, like what makes you take what I don't know how to call it, because it's a
Yeah.
mix of bringing you joy, bringing you the expectations that you have about yourself, but just seeing possibilities instead of just walls.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where, the mindfulness comes into play, right? But if you're working mindfully, you're kind of creating little pockets of self-awareness along the way, right? Oh, I did that Excel spreadsheet. I feel dead inside. Or I did that Excel spreadsheet and look at all this data and these insights. I'm so excited, right? Same thing, different people may, elicit a different reaction or response.
But while you were talking, so I was realizing, so crafting your own job doesn't mean crafting your own job inside of my current company. It means opening all possibilities, including outside of your company, and saying, no ways, I don't want it. It's not fulfilling. It's not me. I don't want to be 50 plus, have some money in the bank, but feel completely useless to the world.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of different ways. A lot of people may not want the pressure of leadership at work,
Mhm.
but they might be leaders in like their religious community or sit on a nonprofit board or, or work with a charity, right? There are so many different ways that we can create meaning and growth and satisfaction. But, I think one of the key tenets in the book is about in order to create work-life harmony, you need to recognize that work is just part of your life. And so when you can ground in that, then there's a lot more possibilities that can open for us. So it's kind of like what you're saying. We're in telepathy here, Yvonne. I feel
And
like
we
there's so many
are.
things where I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was thinking in my head while you were talking
Yeah.
about, I don't know if I have seen it, the graphic, or I'm just imagining the graphic of fear with the age. So when we are 20 and we start working, we feel like we are not afraid of anything. And suddenly versus 30, when more or less when we start getting married, having children, we grow without balls and we become we are afraid of losing this
Yeah.
stability, to losing that specific income that is going to feed your family, and that you think that your
Yeah.
family needs that specific amount in order to be happy, and you start creating beliefs around your head, and suddenly
Yeah.
there is a moment. Some people, and I was discussing with some Swiss guys in around here, they tell me at the age of 50 you start not giving a shit anymore, and
That
that's
sounds
where
about
you you lose your fear. It's a little bit sometimes late, but they
yeah.
feel, but they have this freedom to say whatever they feel because they know what they have reached in the company. They know
Yeah.
that maybe it would be good to get kicked out with a package and
Yeah.
do finally what I was dreaming of, whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some people discover themselves after the 50s that they can do so many things and
Yeah.
become leaders. Even if they weren't leaders in their companies, they become leaders of a specific thing that they have at heart. And
Yeah.
that is amazing. I've seen
Yeah.
60 years old gi- slapping around other people for developing an organization that is just to help integration of the society in Switzerland. And that I found it amazing. But he had courage, he had
Yeah.
anger, not anger, like passion.
Yeah.
Incredible at 60. I was like, what the hell? What a good lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I feel like, it's interesting because imagine if we removed the filters, and this is coming full circle a little bit to bringing your whole self to work, right? To a certain degree of, being really honest and candid and not as concerned about what people think, but really about here's the here's the work, here's why I think this is important and whatnot. But when we don't say what we're really thinking, then the work suffers too. And there's less to be proud of and passionate about. Not to say that you always have to keep fighting for for those things, but yeah, there's I've talked to so many people that have reached, I don't know their age exactly, but have reached a point in their career where they're like, I'm just going to say what I think. And all of a sudden, everybody's looking to them because they say what they think.
Hmm?
Where were you? Where were you when I needed you 2 years ago or whatnot? So there's something to taking a little bit of these calculated risks of, can I push a little bit more? Can I open who I am or what I think a little bit more and a little bit more and see what response I get? So, I always want people to do things safely. Never want to advise someone to do something that they're like, I did what you said and you got me fired. But, how do you how do you start to be that little bit more courageous and see what happens?
Another theme that I didn't want to discuss specifically with you, but while we were talking about people with age living
Yeah.
a life that they have finally chosen,
Yeah.
50 plus, I was thinking about women.
Yeah.
And because it's a little bit something that I care a lot because I have lived with women who have a lot of character, wife, mother, and so on.
Yeah.
And the thing is that this is a story about can I put it? Yeah, there has been many studies that show that women in leadership outpace men. There was a study 6 years ago in Harvard Business Review where out of 25 different leadership traits, women were outperforming men in 23. And nevertheless, the representation of women in leadership is still sucky. And one key influencer that I because I try to understand and understand that part is that maybe women are not showing enough of teeth that men show this aggressiveness, this assertiveness that men are showing, and that in animal language it means I have the power. Uh,
Mm.
and I think that this is a powerful moment also for women to say, how can I not mime behaviors that masculine behaviors that have been successful for men, but how can I remove all these barriers, beliefs that I have that I cannot make it, I need to cover for home, business, and so on, and it is too much, that everything is possible. The same way that is possible for people who didn't have a leadership position in the corporate world, but once they're out, they become amazing. Uh,
Mm.
that everybody has the possibility to get some choices, but it starts now. How you're going to be building little by little this person
Mm.
that you want to be. You don't have to end up the mother keeping the children for 20 years in order to that your husband has a career. Sorry, now it's going to sound awful like what I'm saying, Lindsay, and I'm realizing I know that certain people have the beliefs that it is like that, but in my world is not. I think that if it is a choice, yes, but if it is just because you didn't trust yourself enough to to do what you wanted, then no. Sorry for that, Lindsay.
Oh no, it's fine. I think I'm trying to process what you're saying to see, is there a question? Is it just an observation or what?
It is a question and a pitch. What is your thinking? Are women suffering more in now that we keep it in the context of our discussion about well-being, about burnout, about the situation in toxic environment? Are women suffering more than men because they believe more that they don't have choices?
It's a great question. I'm I guess I'm an equal opportunist when it comes to suffering. I think, I think I think that there is different kind of suffering. I think that there are a variety of systems that are in place and they're self-suffering, right? There's kind of this systemic happening
Mhm.
that's creating suffering at the cultural level, at the organizational level, at the team level, right? There's some systemic suffering, but there's also suffering that we create for ourselves, which I think is where you're going around, you know, am I believing what I'm being told? So just to give a specific example, job postings, there is data that shows that women are less likely to apply to jobs unless they have 100% of the skills.
Mm,
Right. And
yeah.
and so, but what is interesting is I have seen job postings where they put in the job posting because they know this, they proactively say, even if you don't think you have all of these skills, we still would love to hear from you. And so they're taking that psychology and kind of meeting it where it's happening. So, I just give that example of, there are things, and Brene Brown actually talks a lot about, I think, of like the different suffering that women have versus men.
Mm,
Um, but I think going back to one of our original threads, there's a little bit of that awareness of, is this something that I actually believe? Is this a self-awareness piece, or is this something that I've drunk the Kool-Aid, so to speak? I don't know if that translates culturally, but I'm believing what others are telling me versus what I feel for myself. So how do I
mm,
find my place and that space of choice within those gaps?
mm.
I don't know if that helps,
No,
is resonant based on what you were thinking.
no, no, no. It does. Tell me, so I, from experience, I know that writing a book is a dedicated task that is sometimes painful.
Yeah.
You hate your life while you are writing a single page. Uh, that happened to me. Now, in your case, did you? How far did you go in terms of the understanding of the science behind mindfulness, burnout? How far did you go in? Did you need to go deeper? And especially now that
Yeah.
there is more and more books about neuroscience,
Yeah.
and now they are understandable. In 10 years ago, they were not understandable, these
Yeah.
neuroscience books,
Yeah.
but now it's a little bit more human.
Yeah.
How far did you go into that research in order to prove to have evidence-based
Yeah.
recommendations?
Yeah. So, it's interesting because I think I really wrote this book for busy people.
Hmm,
It's a relatively short book. It is my attempt to take all of the research. There's not any of my own research done, but to take the research that I've learned through my various, decades doing what I do, and really put a practitioner's guide, right? Going back to that concept of practice, how do I take what the research says and put it into practice in my life? And
hmm,
I think that's one of the things that I hope is kind of the gift that I offer people is I try to keep things simple, meet people where they're at, encourage curiosity, experimentation. Possibilities can be endless, right? So how do we take what the research says, but not apply it in a kind of black and white thinking kind of way, right? So that's really what I tried to do, is cherry pick from the research.
hmm.
Well, this worked for me. This worked for my clients. I like that concept. I think this is valuable. Um, so you don't have to read all the books that I've read and, uncover all the research that I leverage. I kind of curated it for you.
Lindsay, from there is different type of audiences that could be interested about your book, and my question is related to about how are they feeling today? This
Mm,
ideal type of audience who will feel like this book is what I need today. Is it somebody who is happy at work but wants to his team or her team to become more empowered? Or is it somebody who feels in pain I'm suffering too much, I hate my life? Or is it somebody who says, there is something wrong here. I'm feeling okay, I love my job, but this is not, this is the matrix. There is somebody taking the decisions for me.
Yeah.
Which type of person is it who will benefit
Uh,
the most out of your book?
it's all of the above and the person who's ready to take action.
Huh.
That's what I would say is if you just want to read about things and be informed, great. Use my bibliography, go deep, understand, but I'm really trying to be part of the movement to a future of work that is sustainable for us all. And that requires us to take action. And P.S., when we take action, we start to see change and we start to feel unstuck. Even the littlest things start to create that snowball effect of creating change for ourselves. And a lot of what I advocate in the book is that when you start doing things for yourself, and role modeling it for others, we start to create, a ripple effect around us of creating the organizations, the cultures that we want to see and be part of.
I love that. You need to be ready to taking action. It's not a mere exercise about curiosity. This time is either the pain is so much that you want to take action but you don't know how, or the fact that you want to have more impact. It's not really pain. It's just that you feel something is missing
Yeah.
in your life, and you need to take actions. Love that, Lindsay.
Thank
Lindsay,
you.
how people can reach you out in the easiest way to ask you questions, to just have a good chat with you?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I would love to connect with people. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I, do a lot of posts. I respond to, people, inviting me to connect. And, the other place to go there, I have a couple websites. There's the book website, which is workinghell to workingwell.com. You can connect with me there. And I also have a lot of free resources that are connected to the book there. Or you can also find me at barnettcoaching.com. And, however we connect, would love to just have a conversation. I want to be part of the revolution, right? The way we're working isn't working. So we've got to find a way forward and we have to do it together.
Wonderful. I'm going to be writing barnettcoaching.com, working health to workingwell.com. I'm going
Thank
to
you.
put also the link to your book because I think that sometimes we are a little bit shy to discuss in one shot with you. So you can just start reading the book and then maybe you will have the courage to say, how?
Yes, yes. Or listening to the book. It is
Oh, yes.
available as an audiobook because I know that's how I tend to read my books. So they're read to me, but I'm actually the voice on it. So I tried to have a little bit of fun with it.
Lindsay, it was wonderful to have you today.
Thank you so much.
Really lovely to spend time with you. I love the fact that from discussing work culture, we discuss only mainly about choices, having choices, and
Mhm.
that's wonderful. That the conversation went into something so essential that
Yeah.
we don't always take the time to think about it. Am I doing the thing that I wanted, or
Yeah.
it's just the flow of work, my autopilot thingy, and I'm okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. It is all about pause for choice.
Thank you, Lindsay. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too, Yvonne.